Hello scholars, welcome back. Mr. Hinkle here. Today we are discussing convergent boundaries of the three types of plate tectonic boundaries that help us to understand plate tectonics, the unifying theory of geology. So today we are looking at a comprehensive understanding of convergent plate tectonic boundaries, including the processes of subduction and collision. Let's start with a brief review of Earth's crust. So Earth has a layered internal structure, the core, the mantle, and the crust. And there are two types of crust, oceanic crust and continental crust. Oceanic crust is the crust underneath of ocean basins that comprises the ocean floor. It is relatively younger, more dense, and thinner relative to continental crust, which is primarily granite. Less dense than ocean crust. It's thicker and it's older. So with this understanding that continents are made of continental crust and ocean basins are made of oceanic crust, we can start to understand their interactions because of their varying qualities. Convergent boundaries are also known as subduction zones, where two plates move towards each other. So you may remember from my introduction on plate tectonic boundaries, convergent plates go like this. Two plates move towards each other. Divergent boundaries go like this. Two plates move away from each other. I know it's kind of funny, but do it with me. And then transform plates go like this. They slide horizontally past one another with no vertical displacement. Here we have intense geological activity, huge earthquakes. Volcanoes are associated and we get deep ocean trenches. Rate of movement is about ½ an inch per year or 25 miles per million years. That's how continents can travel the globe over hundreds of millions of years through continental drift. That helps us to understand plate tectonics. Now there's two types of convergent boundaries, subduction and collision. I know, in geology, we just love to name things and to label and to classify and have all of these words that you may have never heard before. I'm sorry, I didn't come up with this stuff. I just love it. Collision is where you have continental crust and continental crust, creating big mountains. Subduction is where you have oceanic and continental, and one plate descends underneath of another. Whether it's oceanic-continental or oceanic-oceanic, that is the process. So, two plates building mountains, one plate descending under the other. Let's talk about each of these. So we'll start with oceanic-continental subduction. We can see the process in this little animation over here. And I want to draw this for us. So continental crust, and we'll start here, is much thicker, continental crust, than oceanic crust. Come down here. Perfect. And so because of mantle convection and mid-ocean ridges creating new Earth, plates can get pushed across the surface of the Earth. They can also get pulled down as they're descending. Tectonic forces create areas on Earth's surface where two plates are converging. When you have oceanic crust and continental crust, the oceanic crust will descend underneath of the continental crust. This creates a trench, a wedge of material called a mantle wedge or an accretionary wedge. And then at depth, a process occurs called flux melting, where the oceanic crust, because it has all of the the basalt and the sediments and the water that's inside of it starts to melt. That melt makes its way up through the continental crust, rises due to density differences, creates a volcano on the surface, and then creates intrusive igneous rock underneath the surface. So we're getting towards mountain building here. If we look at let's see, all of these mountains along here from California, Lassen Peak, Mount Shasta, awesome mountain. I've tried to climb it twice, no success yet. Hopefully next time I film this lecture, I will come back and say, I got it. I don't know, there's some mountains that are just hard to climb. Mount St. Helens, big volcanic eruption, 1980. Anyways, so the string of mountains along the Cascades are all volcanoes. Mount Hood, Mount Jefferson, Mount Rainier, Mount Baker. These are all volcanoes because of the subduction of the Juan de Fuca plate underneath of the North American plate. We have oceanic crust subducting underneath continental crust. Oceanic crust subducts underneath continental crust, creates a volcano. Now this feature is called a continental volcanic arc. And we see these all over the world. We see them really well exemplified here in the Pacific Northwest. Also, the Andes are a product of subduction volcanism. Now, the rocks that are forming deep in the heart of the continental crust as this is occurring, millions of years can go by. The Farallon plate subducted beneath the North American plate 25 million years, and then erosion occurred, and now we have mountains like so, and these are our Sierra Nevada mountains. Whoa, cool. So not only are we able to understand big volcanoes and how they orient perpendicular to plate tectonic boundaries, but we can understand big swaths of igneous rock. This is called the Sierra Nevada batholith. It's a giant complex of igneous intrusive rocks that developed during the subduction of the Farallon plate, a little bit of California geology, and then were later uplifted and exhumed to give us our beautiful and beloved Sierra Nevada mountains. Great, okay, cool. So that is Oceanic-continental. What happens when we have Oceanic-oceanic? Well, let's keep this oceanic crust and all of the other features here, but instead we'll have more oceanic crust. Same process. One plate subducts underneath the other one, except for here, the plate that is older is more dense. As it cools, its density increases. As its density increases, it becomes more dense. So when subduction happens, the older plate, older and more dense, subducts underneath the younger plate. As it subducts, slab pull, ridge push, those are happening, flux melting at depth. We get on the ocean floor a seamount that grows big enough to break the surface of the water, the sea level, and then another volcano. Yeah, okay, great. So I don't usually like to show videos in my lectures. I like to supplement them, but here we go. Convergent, oh, there's the mantle edge, subduction, earthquakes, flux melting, rising up, volcanoes. Yes, okay, so awesome. Where do we see this? Where's the example? Kamchatka, Alaska, the Aleutian Island chain. The Aleutian Islands are a series of volcanoes created by plate tectonics through, or at, a convergent boundary through the process of subduction. Awesome. Okay, so that was Oceanic-oceanic subduction. Now let's talk about continental-continental collision. In this scenario, well, we're already subduction, we're on to collision. In this scenario, we have continental crust and continental crust. And again, the global tectonic forces are converging. And what ends up happening here is the rocks smash together. You have rocks that build up. You have rocks in here where it's pretty warm that will fold. And then you have rocks that will get all broken up and faults. A break in the rock with displacement is a fault. A break in the rock without displacement is a joint. When rocks bend, excuse me, when rocks bend, it becomes a fold. So we get a fold and thrust belt. Now this creates the biggest mountains in the world, and in fact it has the largest mountain range. Here is the subcontinent of India. It's the Indian plate, which is continental crust. The Eurasian plate, also continental crust, and the direction of plate movement is converging right here at the Himalayas. This is the plate tectonic boundary. And we get the biggest mountains in the world. We have the highest peak, Mount Everest, in the world, which is still growing. It's growing up, it's getting big, it's getting strong because of the process of continent-continent collision. Often how this happens, the remnant of a subducted slab, is you have oceanic crust that's connected to continental crust, and I think, oh no, I saved that for another one. Anyways, oceanic crust will subduct and it will pull the continental crust across the landscape. And the remnant of that subducted slab, there's no more subduction because now it's continental-continental, and these two meet and they grow up nice and tall. So the global distribution of convergent boundaries, right here through California, we have a transform fault, the San Andreas. But above, here's the Cascades, Juan de Fuca subducting into the North American plate. Here we have the Aleutian chain. All of the west coast of South America, convergent boundary through the Mediterranean, it's creating the Alps. We come over here through the Middle East, through East Asia. It wraps around down through Indonesia, up and over along the east coast of Asia, and then it wraps around and we've got some convergent boundaries down here in the Pacific Islands. So this is a very common and important type of plate tectonic boundary. Convergent plate tectonic boundaries are one of three. We have convergent, divergent, and transform boundaries. They create important geologic features, ocean trenches, and volcanic islands. Not only volcanic islands, but also, let's just say volcanoes. They create volcanic islands in the ocean and volcanoes on land, forming continental volcanic arcs and or volcanic island arcs. And these types of boundaries are responsible for mountain building on land and in the ocean. Thank you so much. This was Convergent Boundaries, and I will see you in the next one.